Good to you.
How's it, Dave? How's it, Robin? I was going to say it's not Monday, 1 o'clock, Dave and Andrew's coffee chat. It's Thursday with Robin Booth. How's it going, Robin? Where are you in the world or in the country?
I was sitting here wondering if you're going to ask me that question. If I need to plug my computer again and just show you. I mean,
Yeah, show us.
You want to? Okay, well, let me just.
Yeah, show us where you are. You're in Knysna, you're in Richards Bay. Where are you today?
Look, I'd have to unblur the screen, so that's not going to work well. But you can just see it blurred in any case. Cape Town,
That's
just
fine.
beautiful. Okay, you're not going to see it.
I can see a bit of blue. I can see a bit of blue. So you're in Cape Town, eh?
Yeah, Cape Town. In actually my latest Airbnb property purchase. It's like right on the beachfront here in Bloberg.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's super exciting. When we start talking about income generation and that, this actual apartment got 136,000 Rand just for December of income.
Oh, really?
And its general long-term rental is 25,000 Rand a month. So just in that 1 month, I literally paid like 5-6 months of its normal additional rent. Right? I mean,
that is beautiful, eh? Well, I think that's the power of property, right? And the power of getting the strategies right. If you've just joined us, we've got Robin Booth, who's one of our partners and an expert, the best Airbnb host in the country by far, helping loads of members of the SA Property Investors Network on the Airbnb journey, like Ridwan, one of your clients, and Tanya, and you've got a whole range of those clients, which is fantastic. And obviously, we're still in COVID, but we're coming out of COVID. And there's been pre-COVID, during COVID, and we want to ask Robin Booth, what is next? Has anything changed? So before we start asking Robin any questions, just say hi in the comments box. Let us know, where are you in the country? Are you doing Airbnb right now? Are you trying Airbnb? Do you want to get into Airbnb? So please, in the chat box, just say, hey, Robin, I'm in Joburg, Cape Town, Durban, Pretoria, wherever it might be. Where does Airbnb work? One of the most common questions. Let us know what your biggest challenge and what's your biggest concern with Airbnb. We are going to be with Robin for the next 45 minutes, purely going through content, what's working, what doesn't work. Dave and I want to know, what are the big changes that's happened within the Airbnb space? So Dave, who's with us?
So we've got a couple of the regulars in. Boitamelo's here, Tian Rousseau is on, Kokomotso's on. So Tembi, I think Tembi was there last night, which is good. If you guys were at the premiere event last night, let us know. It is really exciting. A little bit more about what we're doing here. So we've got Robin booked for a couple of weeks. So every second week for the next 2 sessions. So we'll be doing 3 of these live streams in total on Thursday at 1 o'clock every second week. Just keeping up to date with what's happening, getting the news. We'll have some guests on in the future sessions. So do yourself a favor and add it to your calendar that will be live next Thursday after next, which is going to be, Thursday the 24th. Of February is when we're going to be live again talking to Robin Booth. So here Thursday, 1 o'clock, just to start talking about Airbnb. Good to have Kashni on, Ngateko, Tembi,
Carol from Durban. That's awesome. Cool. Some new faces, which is great. And just remember, if you are in the Airbnb space or you want to get into it, share with Robin what your biggest concern is. Any questions, pop it in there. But I think what's important for me, Robin, is what's changed. I mean, there was pre-COVID, COVID hits. I remember speaking to Paul, the CEO of Just Property. He was saying a lot of Airbnb hosts started converting into long-term rentals. So they thought, oh my gosh, we can't rent them out on Airbnb, and they all went the long-term route. Tell us more about what's changed in the Airbnb space.
So I think it's great for us actually just to take a step back and really see that, the purpose of our chats here is to update our community, right? To keep them informed, because we know that with any form of investing, it's the information which we use, which really can enable us to leverage more our assets and, of course, our expertise. And especially in the Airbnb world, you'll find that because it's still so new in South Africa and because it got impacted by COVID, knowing what's changed, the type of guest profile that is emerging, all these kinds of information are actually quite important, because if we can adapt and apply them, it means we can continue dominating. And as you know, my passion is really finding ways to take the information that's out there, to adapt it to our specific strategies, and of course then leverage off that. And it has proven incredibly hugely successful over the past 5 years for me personally, as well as for a lot of our investors on this group and on this call, because they too are actually monetizing it and making that work successfully. So if we then start actually talking about what your question was, and we start going into some of those details, well, we know that when COVID hit, basically everyone said, oh, Airbnb is finished, it's never going to happen. But we know, because we have the proof now, that for those of us who are obviously in SAPN, we adapted, we pivoted, and we actually survived it and came out. And we're seeing now a different caliber of guest. We're seeing a different strategy that's been applied. And everything that we have known to date about Airbnb still actually applies successfully well. Now we're just tweaking it and refining it because we want to continue being listed first. We want to continue having high occupation rates, up more than just 60. We're talking 90 to 100%. We want to be listed first. We want to have great reviews. All of that we cover, obviously, in our strategies. And now what I want to share with you today again is just, again, the next level, right? What do we need to be aware of? For example, we've seen that pets, people are starting to travel with pets. One of the fastest growing industries.
Pets, what, like a hamster?
What are dogs, cats, hamsters, pets? And, it was one of the things that we realized a couple of years ago, that pet hotels, pet daycares, now it's doggy daycares, like you take your kid to a daycare, you have those around the world now where you can drop your dog off to a friendly pet care, whatever you call it, right? So we're seeing that emerging market, and we're seeing that now we're actually starting to have listings, Airbnb listings, that are targeting pet-friendly, places, because people are wanting to take their pets along with them, which means it starts introducing things like pet insurance or pet cleaning fees, a whole range of different things, right? Because of course I can just hear people saying, oh my God, I don't want another dog or cat in my place. I'm going to have hair everywhere and all these different kinds of things. But, Airbnb is responsive. That's what I actually really enjoy about them as a company, is they seem to be responding to the needs of people. And what I've actually seen, and I've been a couple of their webinars over the last few months, we've seen the emerging, like I said, a different kind of guest, because they're tracking the data. And I love data. I love information. I don't want to just sit there and suck it up my thumb. I want proof, because I'm going to adapt a strategy, and based on that, I'm going to earn more profit, right? So that's what we're seeing. And we can, delve into that a bit more if there's specific questions. But we're seeing that it might not be a bad idea to start saying you have a certain pet-friendly apartment or pet-friendly unit, and start accommodating it, right? Fence off a little portion, or maybe, put their tiles where actually if a dog or cat does actually, make a mess, it can easily be cleaned up. But again, these different things I think are going to be taking off. I don't actually think it's that strong yet here in South Africa. South Africa is quite a bit behind the times when it comes to the rest of the world's trends. But that's the beauty of it. If we keep looking to see what the international trends are, and we pivot to that, we're going to be the first in this market to provide that, which means we're going to be chosen first. We're going to be highlighted, and of course, we're therefore going to get the pick of the lot. So I think that's super exciting. So that's just one of the examples.
So I could go and start SAPN pet insurance as an income stream, eh? Definitely, it's very interesting, and I think people are becoming more. They want more flexibility. I completely agree with you. People traveling, if I think of my mom, I think of family, how they always want to take their doggy with them, but they can't because it's not pet friendly, but they'd love to. So if they saw an advert saying pet friendly for a small dog or a hamster, whatever it might be, they'd pay a bit more for that probably, right? Because it's pet friendly. So very good comments, eh? Anybody out there experienced that yet in the Airbnb market? If you've just joined us, this is Robin Booth, Dave and myself, just talking about Airbnb, what's changing, what's new and exciting. Again, if you have any questions for Robin, please pop it in the chat box and tag a friend in. If you need friends out there that are interested in Airbnb right now, please tag it in and join Robin, myself, and Dave. So that's one of the things you've noticed that's changed. Has anything else changed other than the pet side of things?
So we started touching base on this, that remote working is becoming an increasing opportunity for people, which kind of implies that they're sometimes now searching for flexible dates. So people aren't saying, I've only got this period of time that I'm wanting to travel. People are saying, well, I can work anywhere, as long as certain requirements are met, and I want to touch base on that. But it means that they're starting to adapt their travel to places based on availability, as opposed to, I've only got 2 weeks at this time of the year, and that's all the time that I can travel, which is great for us, because it means now that our high season as such, which would traditionally be school holidays or Christmas or weekends, can actually shift now. We can actually have high occupation stays during weeks because people are coming to work. What has to be in place, of course, as we know with remote working, is really good internet. So what Airbnb has introduced, and this is finally something which I think is important, is you can actually, in your listing, test your Wi-Fi through the Airbnb portal, and it will record your speed. So you can't fake it. You can't just post a picture and say, I've got fast Wi-Fi. They're actually going to test it in real time, and they will put it up and say, you have super fast Wi-Fi, or you have 100 megabit line, because that's what people are looking for. If they're going to come and stay at your place for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it's a non-negotiable. And they're going to be searching for that, right? So that has been a real improvement, because it actually means now that I've just gone and done it. And it's actually really simple. You can see how it's done, and they will basically guide you through the process. And that will mean they're going to see what's going on. So that's going to be a really important
interesting.
To do that, right?
Has that come out yet, Robin, or they're looking at doing it?
No, it's there. It's there. If you go on and you look under amenities, you'll see Wi-Fi. And if you go into that, it will then say test Wi-Fi speed. Obviously, they'll say to you, take off all your other devices and appliances that might be using bandwidth, click test speed, and it's going to test it. And it's going to say you have whatever your speed is. And then that's now on your listing. So that's it's a really good one for us to have. Yeah. And, here finally our internet speeds are actually getting, decent, 100 megs. So it's actually it's a no-brainer, and the cost is very manageable, because we found that someone's watching, obviously, TV through streaming media, then you've got 3 kids on their own devices, and you need to have good internet regardless. So I think those are really key things that people are searching for. And I said, if we want to access that remote work environment, that's going to be really important, which again then highlights we need to have spaces that are laptop friendly, or that can actually welcome that kind of traveler who also is going to be working. So it's no longer just a bed and that's it. It's maybe also adapting to making sure there's a table that they can work at, or a workstation, which they can also look at. And of course, that's what they're going to search for, right? But if I'm coming back to you, ask what is one of the major shifts? One of the major things that we've seen in the kind of mindset or attitude coming out of COVID, if I can say we're coming out of it, is a mindset. And it's really interesting, because I posted recently on our network that these were the experiences that we're seeing. We were noticing that guests were coming, they were enjoying their space, and then in the review, they were starting to say what wasn't right for them.
Instead of just telling you.
Correct, right? So it's like, why didn't you tell us right up front? So that's it's a shift from everything's fine, which has been a very traditional South African mindset, right? South African mindset is we don't send food back at the restaurant, we don't complain. Whereas now we're starting to see people will complain, but they're complaining behind a non-confrontational way. And unfortunately, their complaints are things which fall into 2 categories. One is, it was never an expectation that was set up in the first place. Like I had someone say,
example,
they said, you should have had bedside tables and bedside lamps next to the bed. And I'm like, there's no space in the bedroom for that. We chose to have a queen bed, not just a double bed, so that you would be more comfortable sleeping. Then you would have a whole lot of bedside tables, etc. next to. And our pictures don't show that either. But that's what they said. From a design perspective, you should do these things. And we were like, but that's not the expectation. We didn't say that. It's you should, So it shows that kind of like incongruency there. And then, of course, there were the other things where they were saying, well, we needed this, or like for me, I mean, you didn't see the picture, but I'm right here on the beachfront in Bloberg. If you know anything about living on the sea, your windows get dirty fairly quickly because you've got the sea breeze blowing and you've got salt coming down. And the one guy was saying these windows should be cleaned every day, and I'm like, yes, if I was a hotel, I guess I would do that, but that's not the agreement that we got. These aren't service departments. And it's that kind of mindset, which is, well, rather tell me up front and maybe I can make a plan, as opposed to just leaving it in the review where that kind of information happens, especially if it's incorrect information. So we're seeing this kind of like entitlement scenario, but it's not the helpful, let's make it better. It's I'm going to complain afterwards, even though we've been chatting to them every day during that stay, right?
So how do you counter that, or what can you do to avoid that, or is it just as one of those things where this mindset is, yes, Robert, everything's good, but I'm going to leave you a bad review?
So there are two ways that we've now adapted to that. Obviously, from our side, the leaving it in the review is the one that we first want to sort out, right? Because that's something which sticks there. So if someone says the blinds were broken and atrocious, which is what we had once, because they're saying that end of the blinds were broken because someone had left the door open and therefore bent the blind, I replaced the blinds. But that review is still going to say the blinds are bent and broken, even if it's 6 weeks after I've replaced them. So that's the first thing we have to avoid. So now how we adapted that, and again, this comes back down to the communication. And as you both know, I'm strong in automation. All my communication is automated, even though my guests don't know that. It's all pre-done there. So I'm already, during their stay, am sending them automated messages, which come across as I'm actually typing them in that moment, saying to them, hey, listen, if you notice small things, please let us know so we can come and sort it out right now. So I'm letting them know that we're open to you letting us know what might not be up to scratch according to your belief about what we should be doing. And based on that, we're getting them the feedback because we're creating a gap for them to communicate a possible problem with us, as opposed to just leaving it and then they have to do it at the end. So that has solved that scenario, right? So that means that they're not leaving that in a review anymore. How we're also sorting it out is in the first day or the second day of when they're staying, if it's a longer stay, we will also, through the automation of the communication, be highlighting and saying, listen, this is what we pride ourselves on. Sometimes you might see something that might not be working up to scratch and our team hadn't noticed it before. Please let us know and we'll come and sort it out straight away. So we're again preempting something as opposed to trying to retrospectively or react to it at a later time. And we've kind of found that works a lot better than our previous strategy, which is everything seemed fine. So again, it's it comes down to communication. And of course, no one here who's listening, I'm sure, wants to have to think about all those things, which is, of course, why I share so much of the content that I do around the automation, so that all of this is done seamlessly, even in my sleep, because I don't want to have to sit there trying to communicate. And all that stuff is really, really important, because then otherwise this way of investing doesn't make sense if it just takes up all my time. But luckily it doesn't. So as long as we can pivot and just readjust, then it works well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. So that's guest behavior with regards to pet, being pet friendly, checking internet access, and managing expectations from the front. I think let's just have a quick look at the comments, Robin and Dave. And Dave, if you want to bring any questions up or read any of the comments that we've got so far.
So maybe one thing that because I've had a few coaching students talking to me about Airbnb. There's a lot of public perception that post-COVID Airbnb doesn't work. So Robin, my question is, the guys who are feeling like their Airbnbs failed over COVID break, what didn't they do that they should have done? What is the thing that most people have missed that has changed? Because it's not just...
Well, I mean, I don't know if those who've joined heard what I said. Is the apartment that I'm actually just staying in now, because while I'm in Cape Town, I stay here. It got 136,000 Rand income just for December. We know that one of our other students on the, in the SAPA network generated over R1 million last year in his Airbnbs from a rent-to-rent strategy. Didn't even own the property, but he got over R1 million in income, right? I mean, it's just astounding, right? And this is still last year. This is in
COVID.
In COVID. So I'll tell you what they've missed. First and foremost, what they've missed is how to get your place listed first on the top of the pages, so that when someone says, I want to travel, your listing is literally right there. Because people are going to, and they're not going to go to page 15 to look at your listing. They're going to probably choose something in the first page. They might scroll down a little bit, but they're going to look within that first page, which means you have to have obviously catching photographs, eye-catching titles, all the stuff which we cover as well in some of our courses. But that's obvious stuff. The stuff which no one else does, except those of us who know how, is how to show those special kind of discounted rates, reduced rates, so it looks like this person is getting a good deal. So in my case here, I might say, hey, this apartment is 6,000 Rand a night, but you're going to get it at 4,000. And we know how to do that so that it shows on the listing as normal price 6,000, reduced price is 4,000, and no one else has got that functionality. They don't know how to do that, but we do, which means these people are thinking, I'm going to get this place at a massive discount. So, and I see that there are all these good reviews, which we also talk about how to get good reviews. Then, of course, someone's going to say this looks like a no-brainer and I'm going to book there. Even though at this moment, I am more expensive than all of my competition, I'm still getting those bookings coming through because of what I've shared with you, how we do the titles, how we do all those little tricks. And that's going to be the first, one of the most important things is how do we outcompete our competition? And that is something which you do have control over. So that's the first thing that I'll probably suggest is going to be there. And then secondly, you want to make sure that the people have a good experience, that they have such a great experience that they're going to leave a good review. And of course, it's like a momentum. It generates that rolling effect. And I think that's one of the, certainly for me, the most important component. We build up a good momentum, good reviews, and then we literally just let it run on automation.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Rob. So looking into the question, chat box, there's not too many questions. So guys, if you do still have some questions, go for it. We got this one from Ricardo.
Yeah, Dev. Sorry.
So how, Robin, so when you're doing your analysis, and I know we will discuss the course later, when you're doing your analysis on the viability of an Airbnb, how are you estimating that? How do you calculate that? What numbers do you use?
So there are a couple of ways for us to obviously assess viability. COVID did throw a couple of curveballs there because the data was skewed, but we've now got enough data of back to normal for it actually to be valid and real again. The first thing that we actually want to see is that there is competition. I would be very concerned if you were looking to open up an Airbnb and there was no one else around you. You might think, oh, great, I'm going to dominate. But actually what it means is that there isn't a lot of demand. And the moment anyone thinks that they are first to market is probably more reflection of there is no market than you being the first to market. So I look for competition. If I'm in a place where there is so much competition, I'm like, great, because it means there's the demand, which basically means all I have to do is outcompete my competition, and I'm gonna make it work really well. So that's the benefit of what we're doing. Secondly, I'm wanting to also have a look at, and I'll go into my competition's listings just to look at what their booking rates are. Are they booked out in advance? How far in advance are they booking? And we're getting bookings back to being April, June, July. Whereas before, it used to be only next week because people were so cautious about, well, is there going to be a new lockdown? Are there going to be new restrictions? We've actually seen that people are now booking in advance again by a couple of months, which is fantastic. It means that things are returning back to a certain normal. And of course, we also use certain software, certain programs, which actually give us current data on who's booking, what's the booking rates, what's the average booking, and what the occupancy rates are of our competition around us. So why do we need to invest on speculation when we can actually punch in an address and say, please tell me the data of my competition around this specific address anywhere in the country? Now that's like it's like a current market analysis, right? Same way we would buy a normal property out there to invest in, is we want to say, what are the comps of these properties in the area? And in that way, we can actually determine with a fairly high degree of accuracy how successful we can be. And then, of course, if you start applying all the strategies and techniques that I love to share, you're going to increase that at least by 20%. And that will give you a good indication if it's going to work. Where the challenge is if, like, for example, in this complex where I bought, there are 100 different units. Some are 1 bed, some are 3 bed. My one, like on the penthouse, is very different to the one at the bottom. That's where it becomes you're going to have to do your own little digging around, because that, unfortunately, the software doesn't know the difference. They just know the address. So that's a little bit trickier. But as I said, it's proven to be very successful for me.
Yeah, that's kind of the same that, like you say, we do with property normally. It's apples with apples comparison. We try to find the like for likes, and you can get the high levels off of a spreadsheet, but you have to often go and do the manual sort of nail down. So B's asking a question here, because one of the last times Airbnb was in the news in Cape Town was with the squatter incident. So at times there can be squatters in the property. How valid is that concern, and what are the risks at the moment?
I've never had an issue, never known anyone had an issue, but of course we saw it as well. The risk, what happened there is that was more of a protest than actually a squatter scenario. They were protesting their housing rights as such. We recently saw also by some of the partners to happen a specific webinar on that. It does not, like the short-term rentals, do not therefore comply with the eviction process, because it's not a long-term residential place. It's a short-term, short letting place. So that can all be sorted out. It's not something that for me is a major concern at all. And I guess just, to know how that works. In my case, for example, this is what I actually really value, is I have locks on my units that are set to only for the time period that guest has booked in. And it's automatically done, again, through all the different software. So when someone books, they get allocated a code, and that therefore goes into their period of time. So if they are squatting, it's actually going to run out. The code will no longer work, and then they're not going to be able to get back in. I'm not restricting them, because also it's a matter of, well, it's like your airtime. If you want more airtime, you need to top it up. You need to pay to get more airtime. And in this scenario, if you want to stay longer, you need to further your booking. Otherwise, the lock shut down, right? And I'm not denying someone their place of residence because it doesn't fall under the Residential Act as such. So that is, for me, actually the better way to resolve, because then it automatically sorts it out before it becomes an issue. And I actually strongly recommend a whole range of gadgets which people start using, which is all around the management of Airbnb. Because if you don't know how to manage and you don't know how to measure, you're at the risk of these kinds of things, and of the body corporates being really upset because little did you know that you had a party down there. I mean, one of the things for me, which I've really realized, is you might find someone says, I'm only booking 2 people into your unit. And the next thing you know, there were 6 people staying there. It's like, how did this happen? So there are ways that we have to resolve that. Like, I've got cameras, which therefore I can see how many people come in. I've found as well with automated messaging that if someone books and they say, there are only 2 adults staying, my automated messaging replies back and says, hi, welcome to our place. We just want to confirm with you, we have 2 adults booked, etc., etc. And we've actually had situations where people have come back and said, oh, sorry, we actually have 4 people. And again, we need to automate this so that it doesn't impact, and doesn't negatively impact. Because in my case, for example, we charge more per person after a certain number. So there's an extra cost if you've got 4 as opposed to just 2. So it's all those kinds of things we want automated again, right? That's the value. Yeah. Automation creates the extra income.
100%.
Absolutely. Dave, what else are you seeing in the questions box, eh? Because I'm seeing the Robin, the very common question we always see is areas. Like Tembi's saying, where's the most booked area? Is in Joburg, Bryanston, Fourway, Centre, and then Johan was saying, not Johan, Tandeka, is there a market for Airbnb in Durban, South Beach, and North Beach? What's your answer to area?
So there are a huge number of areas, and they range from tourism areas to business areas to hospital areas, going to visit people who are in hospital, they need a place to stay, through to school and education areas. Let's say someone's going on an outing, or they're going to sports stadiums, or they're a whole lot of different ranges of which Airbnb can be used. We've had some of our most successful stories from our community within the Sapin group are from people who have used it, like the domestic quarters in their house, or they've converted their single garage into an Airbnb unit, and they are absolutely crushing it. It's actually paying for their whole bond of their house. That's like no money to suddenly having all of their bond being paid for by this Airbnb. I mean, that's classic house hacking. And that's actually where we're seeing most people in our community are benefiting most from. I mean, it's such a perfect opportunity. You've got a spare place or a front room or something else, just convert it, list it, automate it, and get the income.
Yeah. Absolutely. Dave?
Just leaning on to Johan's question. So there's a lot of questions going around the new Property Practitioners Act. Robin, in your opinion, are you going to be affected by the PPRA?
No, not from my side in any of that. I think this is also such small scale stuff. I mean, sure, if you're going in for a big business, that's a different scenario. We're not holding money. We're not initially agents. I mean, Airbnb asks, are you private, just renting your home, or are you a business? That itself doesn't really make any difference. You're just getting paid out when it gets paid out. So you're not ever holding someone from a fiduciary perspective of holding a liability at all in their scenario. So all of that is really sorted out for you. So I don't see any issue there that's coming around with all the Property Act and how that may change. As to contracts, I see a whole lot of other stuff there again. Not at all. Obviously, if you're going to do a rent-to-rent strategy, you want to have a very good contract between you and your landlord. But that is just, again, it's a lease that's allowing you to sublet. And as always, I'll say be open about it. Make sure your landlord is on board with you doing that. Don't go and just go around their back and say you're going to rent it out to your niece, and then you try list it on Airbnb. It might work, but that's just not ethical, right? And also, you don't need to do that. There's nothing illegal about you subletting on Airbnb. We do know that one of the biggest challenges, of course, is with body corporates, right? And I'm not sure if it's come up already, but it would, because a lot of people say, our building body corporate don't allow it. And if that is the case, that may be true. There are some places that do not allow it. What we're finding, though, is if you know how to manage it, then the body corporate is way more open to it. And I think those are the things which, I share a lot about as well in our courses, is around the management. Things like gadgets. I've got a gadget on my roof here, which measures the sound, like noise levels. And I can set it and say, if it hits 75 decibels for 10 minutes or more, it must notify me because it's Wi-Fi connected. So I suddenly get this alert that says, noise of whatever amount, and I can literally message my guest and say, listen, just to let you know that we've picked up noise from the area, please just monitor it. Because the last thing I want is the body corporate to go banging on the door and say, stop this, it's too loud, or for a neighbor to complain. I don't want any of that kind of stuff, right? And even though we say in our rules and regulations, when someone books, no parties, no events, who's to stop them from doing it if you're not there? So all these gadgets are, what's really great about it.
You love your gadgets, eh?
Because you know what it can do? It's got a crowd detector, which means it actually picks up how many different cell phones are in the room.
Oh, wow.
And then it notifies you if it says there are more than your designated occupancy level in that apartment. It's like all these things, and it's Wi-Fi connected. So it's like real time. It also checks temperature, checks mold.
It does everything for you. It does all your inspections.
It's just a little thing that sticks in the roof. It looks like a smoke detector.
Yeah. And then just a question.
Andrew and I got scolded at an Airbnb because we're sitting on the balcony having some chats the one day.
We got into trouble.
And it would have been so much nicer to get a message from the Airbnb host saying, hey guys, it sounds a little loud over there, as opposed to having the security guys come and growl at us.
Correct.
Exactly.
Right? It can also be, and if you're like, I don't manage it, my office manages it. Well, you can have multiple alerts, like different people who had alerts.
Yeah.
You can actually even have automated messaging in place so that if it gets to that level, the guest gets automated directly without you even having to do it either. So, all these kinds of things are just, they're changing the way in which Airbnb is controlled. So all these concerns that people have and body corporates have about security and all of that, that's what they're addressing. And if you can address those concerns, then body corporates, I think, are going to be more open to it, especially in areas where it's already in place and people know that you're going to have short-term rentals.
Yeah, definitely. There's been quite a few common questions about rent to rent and how do you approach the landlord. Now, I know in your course that we've got with you, Robin, you address it in detail, but very high level. Someone's on this call right now, they can't get a bond, they've got to do a rent to rent. How do you convince the landlord to do it? Because he's probably thinking, oh, but what if there's groups of people? What if there's damage? What about insurance? What's your advice there?
The quickest thing to figure out how to speak to a landlord is to stand in the landlord's shoes. So if you were the landlord wanting to lease this out to someone, what would your concerns be? And you've kind of hit the nail on the head of a couple of them, right? How are we going to manage who comes in? Like, I don't know who's coming into the property. What about damage to the property? There's going to be so much wear and tear on the property that, yes, maybe it's not damaged, but now the stuff is going to get used so much, and all those different kinds of things are going to be the impact. And if you can picture that and you know how to answer that because you understand how Airbnb works, then you're starting to position yourself in such a way that the landlord sees that you actually are the better option than someone who is not. And
a regular tenant.
The two things that I love to just quickly share with the landlord is, like, first and foremost, how often do you think your apartment is getting cleaned from top to bottom, all the walls, all the windows, everything, if you just have a normal tenant? Once a week, maybe someone mops the floor. Well, in our case, after every guest, everything gets cleaned, and not just wiped down, but professionally cleaned, because my business depends on it being sparkled and brilliant and clean and everything in place. So your apartment is going to be looked after better than any other tenant, right? Secondly, wear and tear. What do you think happens when your normal long-term tenant gets home, sits down, cooks up a storm, watches the TV, has buddies over for the weekend? That's going to create wear and tear. But what happens when an Airbnb guest comes? They're not coming just to sit in your place. They're coming because they want to be somewhere. Your place is just a place where they can stay or sleep or stay overnight. So are they actually going to be spending much time in your place? Probably not, because they're going to be out doing whatever they're doing in that area. So you'll actually find that the wear and tear is a lot less than it would be if you had a normal long-term tenant there. And of course, the best thing for me is, if you're really worried about damage, well, Airbnb has $1 million insurance policy for every booking that is done. So if there is any form of damage of any way, whether it's building-wise, like balconies, walls, windows, or whether it's your cups and saucers or linen, their insurance policy covers that. So straight away, it's like, well, what has the landlord got to complain about? Because it sounds like this is a no-brainer, right? So
that's all you present yourself. That's it.
Correct. Where the risk is for a lot of people is we can intellectually understand that. Like I share in my courses, you must role play this. Go stand opposite people and you must talk it so that the confidence comes through. Because if you're not confident, the landlord's going to realize, I'm not sure. But if you're like, listen, this is why I believe you should be using me as a tenant, is because of this. Actually, this is why my landlords keep coming back to me in all my different units, is because they realize I look after the place than anyone else. I'm professional. I have a professional cleaning team. In fact, we will want to actually renew this lease year on year on year because your place is going to be better looked after than anyone else. And then they're like, thank you, let's sell it.
Yeah. And then do you advertise your properties just on Airbnb, or do you go to any other portals, like you can see there in the comments box, booking.com or anything like that?
So just started that, never needed to before, but obviously with COVID, we're like, well, listen, we want to put out into all the different portals.
Yeah.
If you're choosing to do that, you're going to need to have a channel manager. You're going to have to have something which manages all the channels. You can't just do it on Airbnb, do it on booking.com, and then hope that if someone books on Airbnb, you're quickly going to go and then block it out on booking.com, because there's no ways you're going to manage it effectively. And then you're going to come crashing down because you're going to have overlapping bookings and a whole lot of different things. So again, we chat about all of that obviously in our courses, where we share how to manage that, how to get around that. My experience has been like with booking.com, it has some pros and cons. It's a bit more tricky to make sure the prices correlate, because they have different ways of how it pulls information. But we do notice that certain people prefer booking through certain platforms. And of course, we just want to maximize this to our full potential. So yes, I do, and you can, and it can also be automated, that it's all on different platforms and still managed centrally. And that's the most important thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Another question came in about insurance. So if you're a bondholder and you buy the property, is there an issue using the property as Airbnb opposed to a standard buy-to-let or homeowner?
No, not from my experience at all. Obviously, we're talking, I guess, about bond insurance, or we're talking about insurance on the property. And we've covered the insurance from the property side. Even if you want to take out your own liability insurance as well, because obviously you've got visitors in your place, you can do that. At the same time, what's really great is that the Airbnb insurance also covers liability, also covers like cleaners who come onto your property, all those kinds of things that Airbnb insurance covers already. And of course, that just makes sense, right?
Yeah, definitely. And another question came in from Miguel. Do you think experiences are a good draw card for Airbnbs? Experiences.
Are we talking about an experience in the property or in an area where people come for experiences?
Yeah, if I had to read the question, I'd say area, perhaps. Do you think experiences are a good draw card for Airbnbs? He hasn't specified, but I would assume experiences like, I don't know, bungee jumping and whale watching and all that kind of stuff.
Again, I would have a look to see what the data tells us, right? And that is, some experiences are 1 hour, people are going to come and go. Others, there'll be a whole lot, so they want to come and base and then do a whole lot of different experiences. And I think that's going to be pretty much general kind of tourist data, not necessarily specific to Airbnb. So, one of the ways in which I often advise if people are unsure is the amazing thing about this kind of investing is you can actually get it going, take out maybe a 6-month lease. And I often say this again, insert into the clause that if you wish to terminate early, that you can just find a replacement tenant to take over your lease, and therefore there are no penalties to you. It actually means you can test this with very little risk. And if you find that it's just not working, you're just not making the numbers work, then exit. And it'll be quite easy for you to find a replacement tenant. And there are a whole lot of strategies you can do to make that work. And that means instead of like, oh, should I buy a 2 million or 3 million rand property and take the risk? Like, we'll avoid it. I mean, when I bought this one first, I had actually offered to the sellers, I said, how about I rent it at twice your long-term rental for 4 months? So you're getting the cash, you're getting it all up front. And if it meets certain criteria, I'll trigger the sale. If it doesn't, then you just know that you've got 8 months of rental within a short period of time. So there are different strategies that we can actually use to test this without committing. Now, I don't know anywhere else really that's going to allow you to do that. But in this case, there are creative ways for us to solve it.
Absolutely, Robin. I can see that we are 43 minutes in, which is fantastic. Some great insights from Robin Booth. And Robin, there's been quite a few people commenting and asking about, we keep talking about the course. Can you just cover what is in the Airbnb course that we've had with you? I mean, and as an example, we all know Craig from South Africa, right? I was with him last night. Dave's tested it. I've tested it. I walked up to the gate. I put the code in. The gates opened. I walked up the stairs, put the code in, walked into the flat. Never had to see Craig or Julie or the kids, and everything was automated. And that used to be a man cave. All the parties happened there. The pool tables were there. Now he's generating very good income. Now his liabilities become his asset. That's what the course can do for everyone. So just give us a high-level view. What can people expect to see?
There are always two aspects to making this work. The first is how do we actually take an existing property or an existing listing that you might already have, and how do you maximize that? What are the photos? What is the furniture? How do you create this listing that actually is going to sell? And of course, then there's the one which is for those that say, hang on, one is just not enough. I want to actually scale this. I want to generate multiple income streams as opposed to just one or two, and possibly even buy a property in Airbnb and actually generate wealth from an asset growth and increasing my portfolio. So there are two different aspects that can be looked at from that. And from my side, I deal with all of those components. And of course, the biggest drive for me is the automation, because there's no point in having a big portfolio of Airbnbs if now you've just put yourself into another job where you're having to sit there with all the communication. And that for me is the main thing. It's like, how do we communicate with the cleaners so that it's all automated? All of my information and my messaging. As soon as someone books, my cleaner gets notified. They have links to calendars so they can update them. On the day of the exit of my guest, my cleaners get notified by SMS again, like, hey, just a reminder, you've got a cleaning today. All of those things are done automatically, and that's exactly what, for me, for more astute investor who says, I'm actually a professional who's wanting to do something really powerful in this, even if actually you just have one property, but that's the one which we say is really important. So, I took all the information that I've learned over the last 7 years of doing my own Airbnbs and doing multiple listings, and we've said, here it is, because why not? I think it's such a great investing vehicle compared to the traditional one, which is I've only got affordability to buy one small apartment, and then it's going to take you years to generate some kind of cash flow from that. Whereas literally with Airbnb, you can be generating that from month one, you're generating something. And of course, with the least amount of risk, it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely, yeah. I know there's quite a few people that have actually done your course that were on here. If they're still on here, I'll have a look. Yeah, which is great, eh? And a lot of people, even last night, Ridwan flew from Cape Town to Joburg. Then your course got seven properties through COVID, which is amazing. Yep. Young Ben, he's 22 years old. He's got 4 Airbnb units. And that's the thing. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Follow the system. Do what Robin does. Robin's there to support. And if you want to go down the road, try it out. If it's for you, it's for you. If it's not, it's not for you. It's completely fine. But I think that's been awesome, Robin. Are there any other questions or anything else you want to address, Dave? Any questions from the group there? The link is in the comments box. If you go to the propertyacademy.co.za and you look for courses, online courses, you'll find the Airbnb course. If you want to check it out, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, it's been great interaction. We've answered loads of questions. Let's open up to Robin. Are there any last comments or anything that you want to address?
They are actually. I mean, we know that there's just so much more we can talk about. And when I'd said to both you and Dave earlier, I said, we've got such a great community here that are interested in Airbnb. It would be great to actually have some time answering their questions and sharing more of the updates and the latest gadgets that we're using. Right. So I've actually got a list of gadgets that we're using that we obviously update our courses on, but I want to share more of those. So our next call, I think, Dave, is in 2 weeks' time. And I've actually invited some of the people who've done the course and started their own Airbnbs and are crushing it. I've actually invited them to come and share their story as well, because I believe that people are saying, oh, Robin, you're a seasoned investor. You're all these things out there. Like, that's easy for you. But what about me? And I'm like, well, here is someone and this is their story, right? I mean, that's what we're wanting to share, as well as, and we'll have to keep this for in our next call, is how to automate getting into complexes where you don't have lockboxes or other things that you can leave there. And I figured out a system that works for probably a good 70% of these body corporates, where before I've always said, just walk away because you can't get in there through automation. That's now changing. And I love it. It's like so exciting because it actually means it opens up a whole new space of apartment blocks through automation, which no one else could do before. And I want to start sharing that as well. So in 2 weeks' time, people had better get back on this call, because that's where I'll share some more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Robin. Always good, always exciting. Good. It's good to get the insights in terms of what's changing in the Airbnb. What is one piece of advice, though, that you'd like to leave the audience today? What's one thing you'd like to leave them? One positive comment?
The the first thing is just to see how it works. I know our free course is up there, it's on the link that you've got there. Just look at all the different ways in which you can make Airbnb work for you. And I think that once you see that, something inside is going to tick and click, and you're going to say, wow, let me take the next step. So there's nothing to lose. Just go and look at it, have a look to see. I'm sharing a whole lot of different ways that it's being done, is being done, different models of it. And I think that's a game changer. So, take action and take a look.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And Dave, from your side?
So yeah, I'll put all the links in the chat box. Like Robin mentioned, we're back on the 24th, 1 o'clock here on Facebook and YouTube. So you're welcome to do that. I put a link over there so you can add it to your calendar so you don't miss out. So if you're like Corbus over there, you're not going to miss the whole thing. Otherwise, that's it from my side, guys.
Awesome. Sounds good to me. Thank you, Robin. Thanks, Dave. And thanks, everyone. And see you all soon.
Right.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.